Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. COVID-19 is affecting every aspect of our lives and even our deaths. With me is Dr. Shabir Ally from the Islamic Information Center. Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's my pleasure to be on.
So let's talk about what happens once someone dies, because, there are the usual Islamic practices, what we do after somebody dies, and that's kind of changed around with this coronavirus outbreak. So can we begin by talking about what usually happens?
Yeah, normally the overriding principle, of course, is that we treat the body in a respectful manner, and we have certain rituals which are going to ensure that not only are we respecting the body from a humanitarian point of view, but we're also in a way channeling this body into the life hereafter. Not so much the body, but the soul of the individual, into the life hereafter, into the hands of a merciful God, so that would involve, first of all, giving the body a careful wash that is similar to the procedure for if we're taking a bath ourselves. And following that, the body will be shrouded in some simple wraps, usually white cotton wraps, and then the body will be placed before the congregation. The congregation will join together in beseeching God for mercy on this individual and forgiveness of the sins of this individual, and of course more generally of people more generally. And then that body will be respectfully conveyed to a cemetery in which the burial will take place. Now, the interment is usually in a hole 6 feet deep, and in some circumstances where the soil will permit, a niche is further carved out at the base of that hole, and the body is placed within the niche, carefully placed in there, and then the soil is put back into the hole, the larger hole, thus securing the body from being disturbed by any wild animal or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. So what you've described is, a lot of care and attention placed from the whole community is putting a lot of care and attention on this deceased body. But that's changed now with the outbreak of coronavirus, where people are afraid of handling somebody who may have had this illness.
Yes.
So what's changed? How have the rules changed now?
Well, a lot has changed, and the changes were implemented gradually. So let's talk about funerals in general now, even in the case of somebody who has not been afflicted by the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. So generally, as I said, we would have a congregational prayer in the mosque. Often it is done in the mosque, but it doesn't have to be done in the mosque. It could be done at a funeral parlor, or it could be done at some other location. But in many mosques, this is common, that the funeral prayer is done by the congregation. But as the rules of congregation rules were put gradually to limit the sizes of congregations, we started to see that restriction on the funeral prayer gatherings as well, until it was reduced to a very bare minimum. And then too, it would be said that it couldn't be done in the mosque itself, but only a few people, a limited number, maybe 10 persons in some cases, would be allowed to pray in the cemetery, but not in the mosque, because they couldn't gather in the mosque. Mm-hmm. Now, if somebody died and it is suspected that this person died of the coronavirus, or it is even confirmed that the person died of the coronavirus, then the restrictions are tighter still. Mm-hmm.
So tell me about what those restrictions would look like.
Well, now the restrictions are not only in terms of the congregation, but how the body might be handled. So you know how I described in normal circumstances that the body would be washed. But now there's the real danger that if you wash the body, you will be spreading around the virus with that water that could be splashing about and affecting the persons who are trying to give this decent bath to the dead body. So the obvious thing for us to do is to preserve the principal lives, those who are giving the bath, even if it means that in this case they can't give the bath because it's too dangerous for anyone to do this, and we want to limit the virus and not have it spread around onto the person, splashed into the environment there, so that anyone who comes in and touches the facilities within that bathroom might be affected by it. So the safest thing is for us to follow the directives of health officials and experts, and not to expose ourselves and the community to further harm. Because one person has died, this is very unfortunate. We're all saddened by that. The family is saddened, and we want to console the family the best we can, and the loved ones of that individual. But at the same time, we do not want this tragedy to be multiplied and have other people to deal with this as well.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Shabir, what reassurance can you give to the families of the deceased, who may be feeling really sad that their loved one cannot have a proper funeral, a proper burial according to the Islamic tradition, may be feeling that perhaps this person is not getting the right send-off to God?
Yeah, well, we're all saddened by that, but we should at the same time realize that God is merciful, and He only charges us with that which we are able to do. So given the circumstances, if we cannot do more than what we're doing, then we're fine, because God is not going to hold us responsible for more than that. Now, as for the person who is going off, and normally, it's like in our thinking, we're thinking, okay, if we get a large number of persons who come and gather and pray, well, then this person will be interceded for before God by a large number of persons, and God will listen to the prayers of those persons. I think we need to rethink that a little bit, because let's say in this situation, it's no fault of the person that the person died under this circumstance. In fact, it is even mentioned in some Islamic traditions that a person who dies as a result of a plague actually dies the death of a martyr, which is a coveted death. So the fact that not too many persons prayed at that time for this individual, that does not diminish the worth of this individual in the sight of God. But even if somebody died without being a victim of the coronavirus, and yet due to present restrictions, a large number of persons could not gather to offer the prayer, I don't think the family should be sad and thinking, well, wait a minute, our relative died and not too many people prayed, so maybe God will not forgive the relative. No, God will forgive the relative. So we need to rethink this idea of our prayer. When God is going to forgive our dead relative, it's not because a large number of people prayed for this relative. We should say that God is going to forgive that person because God is merciful and He is forgiving, and He wants to forgive, and He will forgive. Of course, if there are a larger number of people come and pray, this will be like the icing on the cake, but that's not the real essence of it. The real essence of it is that we're dealing with a merciful God, and He is willing to forgive, and He will forgive.
Thank you for ending on that positive note, Dr. Shabir. I appreciate your thoughts.
Okay, you're welcome, and thank you for having me on.